afternoon. Have we got Councillor Englert online?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Afternoon, councillors, CEO, directors, members of the staff. Welcome to this special budget meeting for 2022-2023. Let us acknowledge the traditional custodians of this wonderful place we call home in our valley, the Iwi people. Pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and those emerging. I declare this meeting open, the special budget meeting of the Mackay Regional Council for the adoption of the budget for 2022-2023. Councillor Englert is, of course, still ill and has joined us online. So to confirm the attendance, can I have a motion that Councillor Englert's meeting with us today is by audio visual link? Councillor May moves and Councillor Mann seconds. Those in favour? Any against? It's carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, Councillor Englert. Nobody absent on council business. Nobody for apologies. Let's move straight in now to the statement of estimated financial position for 2022-2023, and that requires three particular estimated financial positions for 2021-2022 to be received by the council. That is our income and expenses for 2021-2022, the statement of financial position of 2021-2022, and the council projected expenditure for 2021-2022 for projects. CEO, is there anything you need to add on that?
No.
Okay, other questions? No questions. If there's no questions, we're required to receive those three items I've just read out. Would somebody like to move that council receives the income and expenditure, statement of financial position, and council's projects expenditure? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Councillor May.
Just very briefly, Your Worship. So just in these budget estimates for the end of this financial year, we're looking to obtain a surplus of around $0.68 million. And we've through the revision of the budget, we ultimately saw this at 3.9 million as a surplus, but the current estimates are running at around 1.7 when we all finish up. When all the accounts are brought into to being, we should end up around 1.7 at 30 June. Council's future budget estimates are based on achieving the estimated actual position in the current year, and any variance of the actual result in the estimated result will be an impact in our long-term financial plan. So I think that's just something to bear in mind moving forward. Whatever that figure of 30 June ends up is going to impact our long-term financial plan. So happy to move the reports.
Thank you. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. Revenue policy. The officer's recommendation on the revenue policy, it's in accordance, of course, with section 104 of the Act. We have to have a revenue policy adopted for the 2022-2023 financial year. Are there questions? No questions? Nothing you need to add, CEO? Okay. Somebody like to move that the officer's recommendations that in accordance with the Act we adopt a revenue policy for 2022-2023. Councillor Mann moves. Councillor Townsend seconds. Councillor Mann. Any speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Righto, now the revenue statement. The revenue measures report. This is the revenue statement and ratings resolutions that are required by legislation, and the legislation actually requires us to move through them one by one. Correct. So here we go. The revenue measures report at 4.3.1. Are there questions around the revenue measures report? But pursuant to the Local Government Regulation, Council needs to resolve to limit the increase in the differential general rate that identified in the table, and pursuant to the Act, all of those ones that preceded. Are there questions around the revenue measures report? No questions? Would somebody like to move the adoption of the revenue measures report? Councillor Jones moves, seconded by Councillor Townsend. Councillor Jones. Are there any speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you for the rest of the revenue report. Now the report on differential general rates. Are there any questions on the differential general rates? Would somebody like to move the adoption then? If there's no questions, Councillor Townsend moves, Councillor Hassan seconds, Councillor Townsend. Are there any speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Special rates and charges. Special rates and charges at 4.3.3. That's a fairly straightforward report. The questions on special rates and charges? Councillor Seymour has a question.
Yeah, are these all the rural fire brigades in the whole area listed here, or is there some missing out of that?
The rateable land, this is the land to which the plan applies. It might not be all the rural fire brigade, but this is the land.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
So that I'm pretty sure we'd have all the land, whilst it might not actually identify all the rural fire brigades. What we're talking about is the rateable land.
All right.
Okay. Are there any further questions? Somebody like to move the adoption? Councillor Bonaventura moves, Councillor Green seconds. Councillor Bonaventura.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, the purpose of this is to present the special rates and charges for adoption, and these relate to the Rural Fire Service. Special charge 1, $44.60, is the same as last year, and the estimated cost of implementing this will be $196,000, which then gets passed on to the Rural Fire Brigade. Rural Fire Service 2, the special charge there is $25 per rateable resident, rateable landholder. Again, the cost there $27,800, and the Rural Fire Service Area 3, the special charge there is $34.40, which is the same as last year, and that'll amount to $176,885. Happy to support.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bonaventura. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. The Revenue Measures Report for separate charges. That's at 4.3.4. Fairly straightforward. Any questions? You got a question, Councillor Bonaventura?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just the roads improvement, the separate charge there of $21.60, it's gone up 50 cents, which is about 2.5%. But I question again whether this is still relevant. It's been around for many years and it's paid for by all ratepayers, but only benefits some residential areas. And this charge is used to fund like upgrading of existing urban street network, to incorporate curb-to-curb treatments, to improve drainage where practical, and also providing traffic calming initiatives when identified on roads and streets, and a couple of other small ones. But it's only to do with the town area. So because it's separated, everybody's paying for it. I think we should look at. It was put in quite a few years ago to assist with funding those treatments, but I think it needs to be looked at some stage. So I'd like to flag that for next budget period.
If we can put that down in our next budget consideration.
That would be good. Appreciate it.
So see if we make a flag on that for future consideration. Any other questions? No other questions? Would somebody like to move the separate charges adoption? Councillor Bonaventura moves, Councillor Jones seconds, Councillor Bonaventura.
Thank you, Your Worship. And these are the same, these special separate charges. Natural environment, separate charge, $28.10 per rateable assessment. The roads improvement, separate charge, as I said, $21.60. And the other one is the disaster response, separate charge at $13.90. Happy that these are in our budget, as they do a good job, and bearing in mind that we will look at the roads improvement.
Reflect that one for next year.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bonaventura. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. Sewage utility charges at 4.3.5. Are there questions? No questions? Fairly well straightforward, that single sheet. Apply to the levying of these charges in accordance with our revenue statement. Somebody like to move? Councillor Jones moves, Councillor Mann seconds, Councillor Jones. Any speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Trade waste utility charge. Questions around the trade waste utility charge? Once again, it's a single sheet to apply to the revenue statement for this coming year. No questions? Somebody like to move? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Green. Those in favour? Oh, sorry, did you want to speak to it? No. I can get it myself. Councillor Bella, did you have a question?
No.
No. Do you want to speak to it?
Just
okay.
a point.
Hang on, well, did we get the movement? A second, we've got that down. Okay, Councillor Bella.
Trade waste utility charges, I'd just like to mention that while a lot of people are very critical of this charge and willing to pay it, the discharge of these particular items into our environment is unacceptable in this time, and it's just something that we've got to do. And I think that it's better for all involved that it is a user-paced system. We don't have a lot of choice in it. As I said, we've got a duty to our environment, and this fulfils that duty.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Councillor Bella. Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. 4.3.7, the waste management utility charge. Any questions? No questions? Somebody like to move that that revenue measures report be adopted? Councillor Bonaventura moves. Councillor Hassan seconds. Councillor Bonaventura.
I will say a few words, Your Worship. Look, this is our waste management charges for the year, and they have gone up slightly. For example, our rubbish and recycling residential has gone up by $7, and the utility charge for the operations of the facilities have also gone up by about $4 exactly. So it's very good, very mild.
Councillor Bonaventura. Other speakers? Other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. The water utility charge. Any questions? Would somebody like to move the adoption? Councillor Mann moves. Councillor Townsend seconds. Councillor Mann. Are there speakers? No speakers. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. The rates concessions at 4.3.9. Once again, it's fairly self-explanatory. Other questions? No questions. Somebody like to move the adoption? Councillor Jones moves. Councillor May seconds. Councillor Jones.
Not really prepared for this, Your Worship, but I think that for rate concessions, I'm just going to say that council always takes, to heart that there are people in our community that, in a position that having the rates concessions certainly helps them out. And after all, we are a community organisation, so pleased that we are able to do the rates concessions to help people out in our community.
Well said. Thanks very much, Councillor Jones. Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. The levy and payment under the revenue measures report, and we're required to adopt the following resolutions A and B in relating to the levy and payment. Are there questions? No questions? Somebody like to move the adoption of the levy and payment? Councillor Green moves. Councillor Townsend seconds. Councillor Green. Are there speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Thank you. The motion's carried. The discount under our 4.3.11 under the revenue measures report. Once again, fairly well self-explanatory. Are there questions? No questions? Somebody like to move the adoption? Councillor May moves. Councillor Townsend seconds. Councillor May.
Just briefly, Your Worship, I think this is one thing that Mackay Regional Council can hold their head up high with. A number of councils over a number of years have gone to doing away with this discount for paying in a certain period, and it's really pleasing to see that we are still able to sustain that for our ratepayers to get in and pay their rates before that period expires to get that 10% discount. And I just one other thing before I finish. People, when they're comparing councils to councils, should take these measures into account as well, not just the total fee of council's rate of authorities.
Thanks very much, Councillor May. Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. Interest under 4.3.12. Any questions? Somebody like to move? Councillor Bonaventura moves, seconded by Councillor Green. Councillor Bonaventura.
Thank you, Your Worship. Whilst you know I'm also always a little bit hesitant in the area of charging people interest on overdue amounts, but it is fair and we must continue to do that to encourage payment of overdue debt. Current percentage for this year will be 8.17% per annum, and I'm happy to move that that's where we are.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bonaventura. Anybody against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Thank you. 4.3.13, the revenue measures report for related policies. And there's A through to H related policies that we're required to adopt under the officer's recommendation in this revenue report. Are there questions? No questions. Somebody like to move the adoption? Councillor Jones moves. Seconded by Councillor Townsend. Councillor Jones. Are there any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Thank you, councillors. We've got through the revenue statement. Now. All right. Councillors, on your behalf, on behalf of the finance team, and particularly our finance manager financial services, Justin Rule, who has put this document together, I'm very honoured to be able to present the 2022-2023 budget that after many months of work with the elected officers and the officers of council, we've come up. So this is... You're going to have to move through. Right, okay. Councillor England, have you've got this pack? Okay, fantastic. Councillors, this is, as you know, a very strong budget. It recognises the current cost of living pressures that all of us are facing. It's a solid capital spend that we're proposing here today. We're further reducing our debt by just over $13 million. We have very solid cash reserves of $118 million almost in the bank right now, so a very solid position. Our rate increase for this year will be 2.5%, but that's based around the fact that the general CPI for Queensland at the moment is running at 6%, and the forecast in terms of the rest of the year is going to go a lot higher than that. Our surplus is a modest surplus of $700,000 on this over $300 million budget that we are proposing. And out of all of that, there's no service levels that have been affected. So all of our current service levels are maintained. So at a glance, we're spending $277.3 million on operational expenditure. We're aiming for $104 million in capital works projects for this coming year, and just a couple of other small items that we have included in the budget, of course, and $1 million for events and conference attractions to keep those events and conferences coming to the Mackay region, and $700,000 for community grants. Our fees and charges, that is the general fees and charges, will also be rising by about 2.5% on average. These coloured slides will be available on the website, and it's, as a cheat sheet, they're very good, that's been produced by our corporate comms department to just show where the money goes. So an operational expenditure of $277.33 million, this is where it's all spent. And so you can see on the top of the wheel there, the water services charges, the roads and footpaths and bridges, etc., the sewage, the waste, and parks and gardens, and the environment consumes a heck of a lot of the dollars. And then around the rest of the wheel, where the rest of it goes, to make up the $277 million that Council has to raise each year to keep us running and to keep the services to our community. We're aiming for $104 million in capital works, and as you'll see, councillors, in this, as you've adopted, in this particular aim at $104 million, the majority is going to be spent on renewal and upgrades. And that's our asset renewals and asset upgrades to ensure that we reach our corporate goals of very strong livability and strong livelihoods in this region. So we have to have our assets in shape to meet those goals. Out of the rest of it, our signature projects are getting some money, $6 million for the Mackay waterfront, $5 million for the Northern Beaches Community Hub, 3.8 for the Queensland, working with Queensland, the government and the Works for Queensland, the Seaforth Esplanade and the master plan implementation out there. Mountain bike tracks getting some dollars this year as well to keep that going, and 1.7 for Woodlands District Park, which is good news out there. As I said at the start, our rate rise will be 2.5%. And when you look at what the other councils have brought down around Queensland at the moment, that we know of to date, most of the other councils, the majority of the other councils, are between 4 and 6%. The Consumer Price Index for Queensland is currently running at 6%, so I think you should be very proud of the fact that this council can bring in a budget at a modest 2.5% rate rise, considering electricity costs, considering fuel costs, considering all the other costs of living that the Consumer Price Index is saying is going up by 6% on average. So that means the average ratepayer in Mackay, and there's now 53,120 something rateable properties in Mackay, so that's gone up since our last budget, which is fantastic to see. The average rate being paid this year for a 12-month period, $3,048, or an extra $1.55 a week. That's basically what it works out on average. So what do you get? Where does that go for $3,048 for 12 months? This is how it's spent. Once again, on the wheel, you'll be able to see, and I encourage all ratepayers to jump on the website and actually find out where we spend your money in terms of the $3,048 on average that we take from each ratepayer in our district to actually run the council. Some fast facts that we won't read all of this at the moment, but I think it's important to recognise that we've got to put all the cards on the table, particularly when we're compared with other councils. So just on the left-hand side there, you know, our square meterage, or square kilometres, of 7,600, when you compare it to Townsville, we're more than twice the size. When you compare it to Cairns or the Sunshine Coast, we're about 3 times the size of the Sunshine Coast, and look at their rateable properties. So we're providing and expected to provide all the same sorts of services with 53,000 rateable properties as those other major centres are expected to provide, with many more rateable properties and a lot less land to actually administer. When we look at water is something that's often compared in our region. Most of the other regional councils in Queensland and indeed Australia send out a separate water bill. Our water access charge of $347 is included in your account, in your general rate account. So really we're looking for everybody to recognise the fact that, you know, in a lot of other areas that we get compared to, they don't have that water access charge, and the water bills are sent out separately. And our fiscal strength, I think we should be very proud of the fact that this council is one of only a handful of councils in Queensland in a very strong financial position. We have, over the last 6 years, driven down our debt. We have maintained a very solid bank balance in terms of cash in the bank. And the closing position that we're looking for in June next year is forecast at $52.9 million in terms of our debt, which is unbelievably low. It's about the lowest it's been for a very long time in the council. And so we're also looking, as of July 1 this year, we'll have about $120 million in the bank. So that gives you an idea of how financially sound this council is. And on that, we have to pay a great deal of respect to the fact that it is well managed in terms of our CEO and our corporate services department and all of the people who contribute to maintaining our budgets at council. Just a couple of short slides on actually the nuts and bolts of the revenue. As you can see there, between rates and fees and charges, we get 92% or 91% of our revenue. The rest of it is all rats and mice in terms of where we draw other sources of revenue from. But that's a slide that shows you how we have to run council with rates. Now, this is a slide that starts, the next 3 slides are on our long-term financial forecast, ranging out 10 years. It'll show you what we're aiming to do in 10 years. And once again, we're only able to do this from a strong and very, very healthy financial position. So as you can see, the new projects that we're looking to do in blue there, and in 2023, 24, 24, 25, that's mainly going to be the Northern Beaches Community Hub. The renewals, a strong focus on renewing our asset base, has to be maintained by the council, and upgrading is, of course, in yellow. And so total capital expenditure is going to be quite large for the next 10 years. I talked a little bit before about our debt balance. As you can see, in 2023-24, we will be at our lowest in terms of the debt balance. Lowest we've been for a very long time in the council. That enables us, though, to look for some very large infrastructure projects in the future that we can fund by debt and also fund by revenue. So even in the future, getting back up to, in 10 years' time, a debt of $120 million, and a council, we've just come out of that region in the last 6 years. So slowly getting back up to that, but renewing our assets and putting new assets in place, I think this is a very, very good long-term financial forecast. And it's based, of course, on our cash balance. The cash balance is agreed with the Queensland Treasury, and as you know, councillors, The cash balance there is maintaining at least 3 months of operational status for the council. So that green line across the middle is the target for our cash balance always to be at around $60 million. Our operating expenses are about $20 million a month. So 3 months of operating expenses, should everything turn really bad, that puts us in a pretty good position, and any business would like to be in that position. So we can forecast out now for the next 10 years and say we can use some of our cash to fund our renewals and upgrades, but we will still forecast that we'll never drop below that line, that target line of having $60 million in the bank. So it's a sensible budget, councillors. I thank you for your input. I thank the staff for their input. It's a budget that's in surplus. There's going to be further reductions in borrowings. And for this year, although this is the budget for next year, but for this year, we have reduced our borrowings by about $50 million. There's going to be $70 million capital towards our asset renewal when you tally it all up, and all of our service levels are being maintained, and the rate rise is lower than CPI. So, councillors, thank you. I'm happy to move the 2022-2023 budget. Is there a second? Councillor Martin. I've spoken. Are there anybody else? Is there anybody else who wants to speak to them? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. As a councillor, I'm here to represent the community and the best interests in our community. And I do have great respect for our staff who undertake the work and balance our budgets at the end of the day. But this only can be done with good financial management, which we have. While we are all here today to approve this budget for the next 12 months, we certainly must not forget that the ongoing commitment to our long-term financial forecast is really important, because we have a responsibility to look beyond our 4 years, leaving our council in a fit state for the next term of council, ensuring that we are financially viable for the future generations of Mackay and our kids and our grandkids.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Are there any other speakers? Councillor May.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. I think this is a very good budget. It's a solid budget, and given the very turbulent times that we find ourselves in, we've come out of 2 years of the pandemic and the pressure that has put on us as a community, us as a council, to be able to deliver services on time, on budget. As we all know from the discussions we've had in the preparation of this budget, it's becoming more and more challenging with the variables in our community. We see the pressure from inflation increasing our ability to raise our rates and to make sure that our community is in a good place of livability and sustainability for themselves as households, not just for council as an organisation, but for themselves as each household faces those pressures of inflation, lack of resources to be able to get on and do your job. All of those things that we talk about on a monthly basis, pulling it all together and then trying to predict what's going to happen into the future is certainly a challenge. And I want to really thank the CEO, our directors, particularly our finance staff, and all of the other departments. When you think about a council budget, across all of the departments, how many hands has that touched to get to this table today? So I wanted to really thank all of those staff that have had input into that. I think we can look forward to a very challenging 12 months ahead, being able to manage. I'm sure our quarterly budget reviews will be very interesting, because there will be ups and downs. We know that now going into this, things can change overnight. The pressures from electricity and fuel at a minimum will cause us a lot of headaches going forward. But we have got a bright future. We've got some fantastic projects within this budget, to some of the biggest community infrastructure projects that we're embarking upon in the PDA, in the mountain bike track, and in the Northern Beaches Community Hub, one of the largest community infrastructure projects that this council has embarked upon for many, many years. It is a bright future. We want to encourage people to come and live in our region. We want to be able to be in a strong financial position to be able to deliver that for our community.
Thank you very much, Councillor May. Are there other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put the motion to adopt the budget for 2022-2023. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Congratulations, councillors. All right. Let's move on to the financial strategy and long-term financial forecast for 23 through to 2028. And this particular motion requires that the council adopts the financial strategy and long-term financial forecast through till 2032. That's right. Okay. Do you guys have anything?
Thank you, Worship. I suppose the thing that I would just like to note before we undertake adoption of this particular report is just that this is the first budget now that we will have been able to hand down to the community since the adoption of the new corporate plan. And that is very foundational for us in terms of actually looking forward and seeing what is coming in this next 12-month period. That sustainability aspect, looking after not just the needs of ratepayers of today, but the ratepayers of the future, is particularly important, as Councillor Jones made mention of before. And this long-term financial forecast is setting out, at least for the next 10 years, how we intend to do that. So for us, it's a very important piece of the budget process. Thank you.
Thanks, CEO. Any questions? It's a really good document. It was a good read. And to your point, Councillor Jones, I think exactly what we're here to do to ensure that the council is financially viable into the future. There's no questions. I'd like somebody to move. Councillor Jones moves, seconded by Councillor Mann. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. Just wanted to say a few words about the LTFF. While we've had our rates go up 1% last year, and here we are at 2.5%, I don't want people to feel that, you know, that's a bad thing, because it's not compared to a lot of other regions. But what I want people to focus on is the fact that while we're talking about our LTFF, our next budget is planned to be 2%. And then when we go along our whole forecast, we plan it indicatively as 2% for the next 10 years. And I think that that's what our community need to take home, is that we are looking very, very long term in trying to listen to the community and ensure that for the future there should be that level of comfort for the community to know that we're managing things as well as we can for our community for the future.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion is carried unanimously. 4.6.1, the Code of Competitive Conduct Statement. There are specific recommendations in this that we need to be aware of. So the recommendations that the Council is being asked to adopt determines the water and sewage and waste business activities will continue as a significant business activity, and determines that the Code of Competitive Conduct should not apply to the Mackay Entertainment and Convention Centre, the Sugar Shed, off-street parking and sporting facilities as prescribed business activities for the 2022-2023 financial year. As Council considers the cost of applying the code will outweigh the benefits, and the activities have significant non-commercial objectives. And finally, that the Council is required to determine that it does not conduct any other business activities or prescribed business activities. Questions? Somebody like to move? Councillor May moves. Councillor Mann seconds. Councillor May?
No.
Okay.
You've done a great job of summing it up.
Righto. Okay. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried unanimously. 4.7.1, the Mackay Waste Services Performance Plan for 2022 through to 2028. And the officer's recommendation here is the council adopts the Mackay Waste Services Performance Plan for 2023 through to 2028. Once again, that's a good plan. That's a good read. Any questions? No questions? Somebody like to move the adoption? Councillor Hassan moves. Yes, that's right. And Councillor Townsend seconds. Councillor Hassan.
Thank you, Worship. Obviously, waste is one of the biggest costs to council, to ratepayers. This is a significant body of work that's gone into this plan. There's going to be some significant changes going forward in the way that we deliver our waste services, particularly expanding the way we do things, cooperating with our partner councils in the Mackay Isaac Whitsunday region. Really looking forward to the plans that are going to come out of that, and thank the officers for the work that's gone into this.
Thank you. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. The Mackay Water Services Performance Plan for 2023 through to 2028. Once again, the officer's recommendation is that the council adopts the Mackay Water Services Performance Plan for the next 5 years. And again, a very good document. Any questions? No questions? Somebody like to move its adoption? Councillor Jones moves, Councillor Hassan seconds, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Your Worship. As a commercial business unit, Water Services has 7 key result areas, and there are some overarching objectives within a 3-year business plan. Some of the specific external drivers that our community would need to be aware of is that our water supply, is heavily regulated through legislation, and it provides a regulatory framework for the provision of water, sewer and sewage services. This includes our drinking water and our recycled water. Water is supplied from Bloomsbury in the north to Kamala in the south and west to Youngla. Water treatment is supplied to 42,000 residential properties, 3,300 commercial properties and industrial properties, with a total of 46,182 metered connections within our region. I must say to everybody, and remember, we have the best water in Australia.
And the second best in the world.
Second best.
Second best in the world.
Second best in the world, that's right.
Very good. Thanks very much, Councillor Jones. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. That completes the special budget meeting, councillors. And once again, on your behalf, I'd like to congratulate the CEO, our acting director, who's the manager of financial services in the council, and all the directors who've had a hand in actually delivering this budget to us today, and for you councillors for your work over the last 4 or 5 months in actually bringing this to the table. Thanks very much. Congratulations. Declare the meeting closed.